Yep, we are delighted that Brian wrote such an insightful book. So maybe Brian, you can start us off again to share with us your your joy or your love about Nehemiah and where this came from in writing this book, just as a recap for the rest.
Thanks, Perong, and greetings to all my friends wherever you are. I'm in Canada, just north of Toronto, and we've had a wonderful winter. We have lots of snow, and it's cold, and I love it. I was raised on the prairies in Western Canada, and snow and cold was the winter fare. And I loved it then, and I love it today. So I, I'm out walking in the snow, and I just find it to be a wonderful part of God's creation. And I'm delighted to be here with you this morning. We've been working our way through Nehemiah. Nehemiah has been a mentor to me over the years. Uh, I've been in ministry for let's see, for 62 years this summer. And that has taken me through a number of places, mainly in leadership roles with Youth for Christ, the Canadian Alliance, the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada, Tyndale University. And now I'm with WEA in a kind of representative role, but my main life has been with leadership in ministry organizations. And so I found that Nehemiah was instructive to me on issues of leadership. And I've used that as a template for me over the years. This book, Seven Ancient Principles for 21st Century Leadership, are, I think, a fair breakdown of Nehemiah, his life and his role and his activity. It happens to be seven principles, which is neither magic nor divine. It's simply what I have found to be essential in my learning of Nehemiah. Remember, Nehemiah was a Hebrew that was taken by the Persians, and he ascended to a very senior role in the palace of the Persian king. In time, he was given senior responsibility, but of course grieved that his own country was under siege and in real difficulty. And one day his brother came and laid out the problem. So from there, Nehemiah moved forward, and over the last 6 months, we have looked at the various aspects of Nehemiah. And let me suggest that the book to you is free. If you don't have it, make sure you go to brianstiller.com and just put your name in there and get your copy of it. Because what I'm working through is really something that I've detailed in specific terms in the book. And I'm going to follow that, and I just invite your questions. Just put in the chat room your questions, and that's really helpful to know what your mind is. So today I'm dealing with what I think is, I suppose, the most difficult thing that we deal with as leaders, and that's money, resources. And I've got a pretty hard-nosed view on this, and it's this: a litmus test of leadership is building and recruiting resources. And I'm simply saying, if you don't do it, if you are reluctant to do it, or you can't do it, then I say you're in the wrong job. You're in the wrong role. Now, we're going to go through some of the reasons I can't, or the reasons that I won't. We're going to go through those. I understand that this is a challenge. This requires a particular kind of initiative and focus that is not necessarily instinctive to everybody. It's something you learn. It's a muscle that you develop, and you use it or you lose it, as they say. So today, what I want to do is to go through this business of fundraising and talk to you about what it means to recruit resources for your project, for your vision, for your team. And it may sound a bit tough to you, but if and again I come back to this, if you haven't figured out that building resources is central to your calling as a leader, you may want to look at what is essential. And if you are running a ministry and you're looking for someone as a candidate for leadership and they have no inclination or willingness to take on resource development, and you just kind of rationalize and say, well, we'll find somebody else in another way, you're courting disaster. So for Nehemiah, here's what happened. So Nehemiah gets permission from the king to go back to Israel. And remember, he's not rebuilding the wall. He is protecting the place of worship. Worship to Yahweh, Jehovah God, is what's key. And so the building of the wall is to protect that which is essential. So he is so the building of the wall is a strategy to accomplish his vision, which his vision is the worship of God. But so he's got permission from the king. Now he comes back to him and he asks him this, and I'm reading from Nehemiah 2, verse 7. If it pleases the king, may I have letters to the governors of Trans Euphrates, so that they will provide me safe conduct until I arrive in Judah. Number one. Number two. And may I have a letter to Asaph, keeper of the king's forest, so he will give me timber to make beams for the gates of the citadel by the temple, and for the city wall, and for the residence I will occupy. Now, what I love about Nehemiah, he doesn't separate his vision from sustainability. Remember this, that if something is worth undertaking, if it's worth the start, it's worth the finish. Now, I have found often that people, I use the word spiritualize money. They say, oh, we'll pray about it, or we'll get to it when we need it. But money, resources, are at the heart of God's creation. Resources to do anything are integral to life. And if you or your organization is not dealing with the recruitment of resources along with description of the vision, I think it's a sign that something's wrong. Because often we leave the resource development on the bottom rung of requirements rather than making an essential part of the leadership skill and within the high priorities of the ministry and the calling. So my point is that resources need to be at the high end of your priority list. When you describe vision, when you work through strategies, in that same conversation, on that same board that you're writing, put resource development. How are we going to do it? Make that key to everything you think about and do. And that's being spiritual because that's being inclusive of God's creation. So let's look at Nehemiah, how that worked. First of all, let's talk about the importance of giving. This is a lesson that I learned. It took me a long time to learn this, and I learned it the hard way. Is that the treasure of people, their resources or their money, it follows their heart. Money is a critical means by which humans interact. It's the way societies work together. And without it, societies grind to a halt. Now, we know that Jesus, he often spoke about money. He factored it into the heart of his calling. And in Matthew 6, he says, do not store up for yourselves treasure on earth where moth and rust erupt and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasure in heaven where moth and rust do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where the treasure is your heart will be also. There it is. That last line. Did you hear it? For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Now, for a long time, pardon me, I assumed it meant the opposite. I thought I thought it said, for where your heart is, there your treasure will be also. You see, I had inverted heart and treasure, and for good reason. You see, my heart attracts my giving. When I'm emotionally moved, I give. And so organizations that are working with the poor or the broken and the privileged, they play that heartstring well in their fundraising. But that's not what Jesus said. Now, he didn't say emotions aren't a trigger point in giving. In this text, he's talking rather about ownership and investment. So, what is he saying? Giving is the link to a person's interest. Investment transforms the heart, it changes the heart. Giving is the link to a person's interest. So, in my devotion, so this morning, and as I was on the treadmill doing my workout this morning, I was going through my prayer list. And I instinctively pray for those that Lily and I financially support. We give to people, to organizations, and to missions that compel our interest. But our investment locates our interest, and then we want to know what their needs and their work is. Our gift to that person, it secures our interest. It secures their interest in me and my interest in them. And because my treasure has been given to them, that treasure captures my heart, and my heart is there with them. And the opportunity of ongoing, sustaining support is there when my heart has been captured. And how is my heart captured? Well, maybe the first time I gave, I was emotionally moved. Or maybe the first time I gave, you convinced me of what you're doing was worthy, and it was worthy of my investment. And when I started to give, all of a sudden my heart is captured. So, regardless of the ministry or the business one leads, our task, and my task in ministry and your task in leadership, is to bring people's heart into mission and strategy. And that ultimately is described by giving. Let me be very blunt. If a person isn't giving, I question how much they're interested. Now, they may be interested, they may pray, but I know that where the treasure is, there is the heart. If a person gives, the, the chances of their heart and interest and prayer being attached to that gift is higher. So gifts become the levers of encouragement and acceleration. So the small and the large gifts, they influence, don't they, the well-being of our ministry. Giving accomplishes what donors can't do on their own. This is very interesting that I remember I was at Tyndale University, and I got a letter from a person who wanted to give a large sum of money. And so I went down and I spent an afternoon with she and her husband. And I got to know them, their story of faith. And over the years, they had basic jobs, and they had carefully saved from their income. And so I said to her, why do you want to give your savings? You have saved this for 40 years. Why do you want to give that to our university? And she said, because you will know what to do with it. And on my way out, I said, you look so happy. And she said, yes, the money is now in your hands. And I understood something that I had never clued into before. She needed me to fulfill her desires. She had desires. She loved students, but she couldn't help students. She couldn't do in their lives what she wanted to have done. She needed me and our faculty and our university to do that for us. So the donations that Lily and I give, we give it to people who can do with this money what we can't do ourselves. Ministry helps donors fulfill their own desires and objectives. So, raising support, that's essential to our leadership. Uh, Leaders, we bring people around a mission, and giving is a way of connecting with those who will join us. And as we link with the supporters giving, we capture their hearts. Now, let me just say here as a parenthetically, I know that when I talk about money and resource development, we have promoters and pundits who advocate influence and they they lead others to in ways that are uh, I think very unbiblical, and they create all kinds of notions of health and wealth. If you give to me, you'll become wealthy. But what I'm talking about is you who was leading a ministry or an organization or a mission, you who are exercising authority. What we do is that we set up the patterns within the organization of how donors are seen and understood and how they are recruited and nurtured. I have found that raising funds is not only a high priority, but it's a wonderful calling. It connects me in a more personal way to people as I spend time with them and I learn of their families and their aspirations and their needs of opportunities. And then I find ways of serving them by attending weddings and funerals. And just this morning, I got a call from a dear friend who was a major giver. He passed away. And so I'll work to find a way to get down to the funeral, to be with the family and to have moments of praying in now in his passing away, but often praying with him in terms of his decision making. So raising support is about heart transformation. And so as leaders, we seek human transformation. It doesn't just happen immediately. It takes time. It requires nurturing and building relationships. And just don't assume that making people feel good will result in support. It's good that people feel good. However, getting people to feel good about your ministry or project doesn't automatically translate into giving. Giving is a transaction in which the case for support is made and the request to participate is clearly presented and then followed up. That's the beginning of what can be a long relationship. So let me deal with some common objections from leaders. And if you're following the book, I'm on page 59. The first one, of course, is I don't have what it takes to be a fundraiser. Now that response comes from a variety of things. Sometimes we know fundraisers who are who are really just hustlers, who are so in your face and eventually manipulative. We say, "Man, I have nothing in myself that could do that." So I understand that, but don't allow a stereotype to hold you back. My hope, my hope for you and for us all is that we have those life-changing perspectives that set us free in new and creative and powerful ways. And this one area, funding, is for me in many places that I go to, is the number one roadblock that keeps us from doing what we want to do. So the second objection is I don't like it. Well, so I don't like the detailed reports. Many things we don't enjoy, but they need doing. Or someone will say, I'll get others to do it. Yes, that's important to get others in the organization to do it. And depending on the size of the organization, we'll get others to help. But the prime benefactors or donors, they want to hear from you, to hear you describe your vision and to feel your passion. You are key. Your leadership role is important. Then I hear this. I have more important things to do. Not really. Now, depending on the size of your ministry, uh, I've been involved in startups and in rebuilding organizations. And so when there's just a few of you around, you juggle your many tasks. And you realize that one of the tasks is to speak of mission and vision. Because as a leader, you know that when payday comes and there's a lack of money, it's the leader that people looks to for a solution. So it's better to have thought of that long before that day comes. So a mission worth doing, it needs to be sustained. And regardless of the vision's importance or necessity, it will end as mere words if building a support base hasn't been essential to your life and schedule. The other objection is people don't like me speaking of money. I found that isn't true. At one point, we assembled a number of donor names from 4 mission organizations. A number of us went together and did this. And we got a research company to ask a series of questions, and it focused on their attitudes of money. People, this is what surprises people who gave to these agencies said their number one request was for us to help them manage their money. That was a real surprise. An understanding of giving is as natural to the managing of money as seeding is to the process of farming. So I have found that people don't mind me speaking of money as long as I make it objective, as I make it clear, as the organization shows that it is careful in its fiduciary handling, that money is carefully organized and accounted for. So don't work with the attitude people don't like me speaking money. But money is within the context of vision. And the things we've talked about the last few weeks, that covers that. You may want to go back and just read over those chapters of vision. Another objection is some fundraisers make me bristle. Well, join the line. I've been so turned off by some fundraisers. And sometimes, and I found this to be true, organizations, they'll make a mistake by turning the raising of funds over those who are able to make the pitch and the request, but they lack credibility, or they sound like an infomercial selling cutters or rotisseries. No, that's not what we're doing. It's to have people within the organization who know what the mission is, can speak with some depth about what the vision and the operation is, and then in that context, talk about money. The other objection is some people are turned off when I ask them to help. Well, I've been doing this for a number of years, and I've been turned down, I think, no more than 10 people in decades of making thousands of requests for funds. Yes, some people will just say, no, I'm not interested, or no, I can't. And we respect. The money that people have is their money. We have no right to it. We have no right to say what they should do with it. With humility, we come to them recognizing it is theirs. But I have found if the setting in which the request is being made is appropriate. So the setting matters. And if a simple invitation is made, people are willing to consider, and many honored to be invited. Another objection is people aren't interested. Well, that begs the question, how do you know? Has it been tested? By whom? So ask. And then the last one is there are not enough resources out there. And this idea of resources are zero sum. Zero sum is an interesting idea, and let me just explain what it means. Zero sum means there's only so much in the pot. And if I give some for you, I have no to give for you. Another example, uh, two younger grandsons would come running in the house. And Zachary would come in first, and he would jump in my arms when he was little, and he would want a hug from Grandpa. And the second one, Jacob, would come in, and he would look annoyed because he believed that Grandpa's affection was zero sum. Grandpa only had so much affection, and he believed it was zero sum. So that if I gave affection to the first one, the second one had none. Resources aren't zero sum. I realize that in many parts of the world, resources are hard to come by. But never assume that because someone has given to one cause, it doesn't mean that they won't have resources for another. Early in my ministry here in Canada, I became friends with an evangelist by the name of Terry Winter. He had a television program. He had very, very fine meetings. He and I became friends. And we did something that I've never heard anybody else did. We shared names of people who had given to our ministries. I would share with him and he would share with me. We trusted each other, but fundamentally we believed this, that if someone would give to the ministry that I was leading, there was a good chance that they would give to the ministry that Terry was leading, and vice versa. So this is the Father's world. This is a world of enormous resources, and we'll be surprised where they are. Now, let me suggest why raising resources is so important. You see, as leaders, we articulate the vision. And our volunteers, our donors, our associates, our public, they need to hear us outline the vision and passion. Now, I do know we have the story of Moses. He protested, he pled the lack of skill. And so his brother Aaron stood in. But when they got going, Moses was the one they heard from. So it matters that you work on your presentation skills, test them out, have dry runs, have someone sit and give you a hard time as you make your presentation, refine it, write it down, make it clear and compelling and brief. Don't, don't get them into the weeds. Don't give them too much detail. Giving that presentation, working on it. It really matters because, first of all, what it does, it refines in your mind what your mission is. And as people ask you questions, it'll help refine it even more. So it's the leader that articulates the vision. And a leader draws hearts to the mission. We win the hearts of people, and resources become part of that exchange. Now, there are benefits of being involved in building resources. First of all, it's personally renewing. Uh, Having visits with people on money is like other kinds of visits. You come face to face with other people, their needs, issues, and concerns. It gives you opportunity to speak hope and love into their life. It gives you an opportunity to hear from them and allow your life to be involved in their needs. So it's important as we meet with people to ask a bit about them. I have found generally in my meetings with people, it's really the last 10 minutes that I need to make the presentation. I'll be there for 2 hours. They may ask about various things, but there's many things that they're interested in talking with you about. You're involved in ministry and other places where they don't go and with other people that they don't meet. They'll be interested in knowing from you what you think about that person or this issue or what's going on over here. So you become a conduit of kingdom news. So allow the conversation to be around their interests. Now, here's one that someone put out. What happens if it's a friend? And I have found over the years that the major donors have become friends. And some of my good friends I've gone to for money. What do you do when it's a friend? It really matters that we divide our time and focus in that. So what I will do, I'll say to my friend Herb, in our conversation, today I need 10 minutes with you just to give you an update and to put before you an opportunity. It's almost like taking one hat off and putting on another. So they know at some point there's something that I have to do because it's my job, it's my responsibility. And they respect that. But just identify it, send a message to them. But for you as leader to raise funds means you are personally invested. It matters that you are giving personal time to build the cause for support. It also keeps us in touch with our broader reality. Here's I've told Parong this. Over the years, I had a habit of instructing my assistant or those that worked with me that I would have three donor points a week. That was an arbitrary number that I chose. And I found I could fulfill it. And it wasn't just always to ask for money, it was just to be with donors three times a week. Sometimes you'd have five, sometimes you'd have one, sometimes you'd have none, and other times you'd have four. But over the year, I would meet up to three times a week with a donor. And if I did that consistently, I would work my way through people, through meeting with people, and eventually they would say, well, there's somebody else I'd like you to meet. But the building within the schedule provided opportunity for, in my discipline, to make sure that I got to people because this is the default of most of us. Fundraising is the last thing we'll do. It's the last thing we'll do in a day. It's the last thing we will put on our agenda. We will do it when we're in trouble or when we're in a campaign, but it's not considered part of our daily thinking, praying, and doing. It needs to be scheduled in. So it keeps you in touch with a broader reality. You'll be stretched. Many donors will be maybe professional people or entrepreneurs. They know the importance of the risk and the dangers of the status quo. And so meeting such people can be a risk. They may press with questions that cause discomfort. But the enormous benefit, of course, is that it encourages us to live beyond the fences of our former years. So look at your fence of this last year. How far have we gone to build resources? Are we in that same field today, or are we moving the fence? Also, building resources inspires your staff, inspires your board. When they see you demonstrating the importance of mission, as they see your passion and commitment in meeting donors and building resources, it fires them up. It spreads the story. And I would often take a staff member with me and let them meet the donor, let the donor meet them. And I would set them up saying, okay, I'm going to ask you this question somewhere in our conversation. So I want you to tell the donor about this. Let me come back to this again. Investors want to hear from their leader. They have a great interest in knowing who's in charge or who's senior. Don't give them information overload. Let them know you because your credibility and their knowing you will be the sustaining factor in the sustainability of your funds. Now, we learn. This has been a lifelong learning experience for me. And in the learning, I have found myself to become a storyteller. I tell stories of what God is doing, about the needs and the opportunity. And it's something that we get better at as we do. That's why the frequency of meeting with people is a way for us to continue to stretch that muscle, to use that gift, to refine the story so that it can be clear to others. Also, in your funding, developing funding, you build networks. You build new connections that will help in unbelievable ways. You'll build contacts that will last for a lifetime. Now, we got to be careful that in our leadership role, and because we meet with a lot of people, that we end up or assume that we are their spiritual counselor. Don't assume that. But we be responsible when people turn to you for confidential counsel. And in making your contacts, in building your donor appointments, it develops other kinds of support. Now, while you're talking primarily about money from a donor, you also recruit prayer support or volunteers. And cultivating prayerful partners is a marvelous gift of our ministry. So, what is resource development? It's number one, articulating your mission, your mission. You may know what you want to accomplish, but until you define it in brief and compelling terms, to other people, it'll be just wind and fury. An idea may lift your spirits and drive your energy, but until it's tested and retested, it may be nothing more than a bundle of nerves wrapped up in conversation. We have this thing called an elevator speech, and it's this. If you and I get on at the ground floor and we're going to the 15th floor, say, for example, during that time, can you describe to me why what you do is important and what you're doing? The elevator speech. Can you do that within those few minutes of writing? If you can't do it, the statement may be too abstract. So, articulating your mission, work at it, develop material on it. And again, don't get into the weeds. Give the high points, give the mission, not what you do, but what you accomplish. Don't tell me all the things you have done. Often you get reports say, I've done this, I went there, I said this. No. It's not a listing of the events or the people that you have done. It's the things that you have accomplished or the things that you are setting out to accomplish. So, resource development is articulating your mission. It's also living the life. You see, giving doesn't come from a smooth presentation. It comes from people who are attracted to the cause. The talk and the walk of our ministry, they must match. You see, when a donor invests in our ministry, they're taking a risk. So what evidence do we give to donors that we are reliable? I like to ask supporters, what had first attracted you to invest in our ministry? And secondly, what sustains your ministry? You may want to ask, and what more would you need to be assured that your trust is well placed? So we lift people's eyes to the larger issue. We invite people to walk the walk of faith. Now, sometimes we get what's called go away money. People just give you a modest amount to get rid of us. And that'll happen and it'll be embarrassing. And sometimes the human impulse is to give when it's convenient and what's comfortable. So to discomfort people in their giving isn't to exert pressure. Rather, it's to enlarge their understanding of what together can be done. Making a request isn't to make people feel uncomfortable that they're stingy. It's not to exert pressure rather than pushing, it's pulling up. It's enlarging people's understanding of what together can be done. So let me just let me just go down. So let me just say resources when available and recruited doesn't fall from the sky. The Bible text makes it clear we lack because we don't ask. So balance trust in God with actual fundraising. I've already made my case on trusting God, and such trust is essential to leadership. And let me suggest that we go back to that chapter on faith. Remember what I said about faith. Faith isn't what I believe in. Faith is what I trust God for in ways that without his help I'll fail. Faith is a risk-taking act where I trust him when I walk on the water that he'll sustain me. That when the feet of the priests with touch the water, he will cause the water to divide and they can walk on dry land. But that that dividing of the water didn't happen because someone believed it would happen. It took the act of faith. So the activity of ministry is itself an act of faith. And by trusting God for your ministry, you're already demonstrating faith. Bring that into play with people who have the potential to give and let them see that their participation with you in faith will do something that, apart from your activity, apart from your involvement, apart from their partnership with you, they can never do. So let me go back. Let me go back to the beginning here. Let me just take a moment just to remind us again that our responsibility as a leader is to initiate and care for the building of resources. It's a God-given call. It's as spiritual as defining the vision. Because what you are doing, you are engaging with God in ways that only with his help you can make it. And you are demonstrating to others this walk of faith as a leader. Now, remember that this sixth principle that I've extracted from my study of Nehemiah, it's inclusive with the other six. We'll finish next month with politics. And my line is everything is political, but politics isn't everything. And the dynamic, the human dynamic of ministering and leading an organization, and the internal and external factors that we play that come into play, that are political, and politics is a gift of God. It's the activity of people. So this discussion today on resource development, it's within the larger context of your call and the Lord's work in your life. So there we've come to the end of what I think is essential in the creating of ministry and our acceptance as leaders in the role of developing resources. Parong, I've been going full at it. What am I missing? What more could I say, or does someone have a? I don't see anything in the chat room. No questions.
I guess, as you have pointed out, this is the litmus test. Sometimes our litmus test turns blue instead of pink and pink instead of blue, and people can get very discouraged with failures in resource development. How would you encourage them besides thinking that, all right, I can't articulate the mission, I'm out of here? How would you suggest we can support leaders or encourage leaders about that?
Well, that would be so particular, but I would say this, that if you are where you are, there's a reason for that. You didn't land in this ministry role happen chance. Um, Your interest in this topic of leadership suggests that you have gifts of leadership. You may remember I was the second or third principle we dealt with, is that I think that vision describes gifts. I can't have vision for something that I'm not able to complete. I'm not able to accomplish. So gifts are uh, are consistent with what my interests are. So if you've been brought into play as a leader in your organization or ministry or by a community of people, they see something that maybe you don't see. And so I would suggest, first of all, look hard at the issue of leadership. And we all lead differently. I'm I'm kind of a classic type A. I'm a bit of a bull in the china shop. I know that. But mine is only one style of leadership, as you know, Perong. So I would say if you're discouraged, look at the call of leadership. I'd go back and read Nehemiah. I'd study this again and ask, Lord, okay, if I'm in the wrong place, Lord, get me out of it. But if I'm here, there's some reason that I'm here. And help me then to develop areas where I'm weak, to get people to help me where I need help, but to continue on until it's so obvious that I'm in the wrong place. But my suggestion is that you are in the right place for particular reasons of your own gifting and maybe things that you don't even recognize yourself. I, I mean, just speak on that. When I started out, I, I, Lily and I were married. I built a little organization for evangelism, and I traveled. Lily and I traveled Canada, and we preached and did music and everything. And I was a disaster. I was a disaster. And I was invited to go with Youth for Christ in Montreal, and I thought, I don't want to do this. And I got there, and I found that I had some instincts. And it took me a while to learn that my primary gifts were leading, and that's where God wanted me. So you'll be surprised as to how the Spirit will go before you. And but if you are discouraged, to answer your specific question, Parong, I, for me, go back to Nehemiah, find some other books on leadership and look at those. Um, there's a very good one by Rob Hoskins, along with John Maxwell. Uh, that he's just a new book on leadership that I think would be helpful to read.
Thank you. We have a question too as well. How can leaders effectively leverage non-monetary resources like relationship, time, and skills to achieve organizational goals? Could you speak to this in terms of leveraging people and collaborative expansion beyond just monetary contributions?
Yes, what I was saying about money. I use the word money. I mean resources. I mean right across the board. So volunteers, all of those things that you have just identified. Yes, we we build those the same way by defining vision, by meeting with people, articulating needs, and when we describe a need. So, for example, in non-monetary resources, describe those needs in the mission, in the searching for resources. And so meeting with people is to expose them to the full range of resources that you're looking for, resources that speak specifically to your mission and what you are looking to accomplish. So resource development, be it volunteers or money, happens essentially the same way. Articulating the vision, meeting with people, explaining the opportunity of need, and watching the Spirit open doors.
I really like what you mentioned about giving donors what they cannot reach in themselves. Um, we are not beggars and we are trying to do what we can do to help others to use their money wisely, money management. Um, how do you, like you mentioned in your story, my question is, how do you remind yourselves that? Like in the whole finding money, sometimes you're like, all right, sing, I'll sing. All right, dance, I'll dance. Tell me what you want to do and you get the money. How do you remind yourself constantly that it's about, you helping them to achieve a goal?
Well, obviously, what I am doing won't interest everybody. And so the very principle of meeting with a variety of people is to find people whose interests come closer to matching what our mission is about. So, for example, if I'm running a university, but your only interest is in feeding children, it may be that of all the talk I could do with you, your interests aren't going to match. So it's it's finding people who will whose interests overlap yours. And and then I think just in the normal course of conversation, when they hear the mission, the activity, the goals, your reports, you trust the spirit to match their interest in giving with your needs for giving, resources. And I'm using resources in the broadest sense. Uh, so the Spirit is very much involved in this. The Spirit is the superintendent of God in life. And so as I move out today, as I make calls, as I meet people, I'm also very much aware of what I do and what you do. And if I find a person who just has no interest in the area of ministry I'm involved in, but might have interest in what you are doing, again, it's not a zero-sum game. So if my heart is really to see God supply the needs of ministry right across this globe, then my activity is, Lord, I need resources to meet our needs. So bring me in contact with people who can help. But if I meet people who are interested in something else, make me big enough to help to encourage them to go to another place of giving that matches their interest.
How do we
Yes.
expand the people we know? But maybe someone else has a question before I just bombard you with my question since I can take it offline with you. Does anybody else have a question for Brian?
Okay, maybe I'll just close with a prayer then, shall I?
I think if Ifrahin wanted to say something, I distracted him.
Oh,
Please go
okay.
ahead.
Hi, Ephraim.
Hi there. I just has one comment only, a brief one. People always give to the cause, not to the person.
Yeah, I
As
don't
strong
agree.
as we can advocate for our cause, people are open to give.
Well, I think it's bothly true, Ephraim. Uh, I can use an example. Um, a donor who I meet 20 minutes a year. I get 20 minutes a year with him, 20 minutes in his office. And he's been giving regularly for years. And I met with him recently and I was giving him some presentation. He says, Brian, he said, I don't need to hear about it. I give because I trust you. I give you the money and you do with it best that you feel. I trust you. So I think, Ephraim, we have both. I think it would be short-sighted um, not to believe that people give because they trust me or trust you. So as I'm answering this question, I'm thinking about who are the people that Lily and I don't donate to our monthly giving? And I think I could make the case that a number of the people who we give to is because we trust them. And if they go from one cause to another, because we trust their ability and their integrity, we would continue to support them regardless of what they did or where they did it. So I think the two are true. So just don't say it's one or the other. That's the danger of saying it's all this or it's all that. No, I think it's multiple. So learn from your experience. So if you have an idea like this, ask people of it before you conclude that you're right and everybody else is wrong. It's good to learn from others. So I've learned from you, and I think that cause is critical, but I think also people give to people.
Thank you.
Great. I think, yeah, just to add to what you said, Brian, as a much younger person, I often feel like people don't trust me, but because of the cause I'm related to, people are willing to give me a chance. But that's like a door opener, you know. After that, it's up to me to make that relationship, cultivate it, and to show the donor what the ministry does, and that Payron can serve effectively in that ministry. So I agree what you said, Brian, that this is not one or the other, and they often sit together. You can have many causes, but if you do not prove that you can do something, that becomes very hard. Yeah. There is a short question about shortage of resources and a case study. I think you've mentioned something about Tyndale before, so you can decide if you want to answer that or you would like to close us in prayer, Brian.
I missed the question, Perong.
There's a question on the chat that asks, do we have a case study from which we can learn on leaders' response to shortage of resources, funds, and ministry?
Oh, that's a good question. Hmm. I no, I don't have one that comes to mind. Um,
What do you do with Tyndale when you first went in, when they had no money? What was your first thing you did?
oh, that's a long story. It was bankrupt, so it had gone under the bankruptcy provision in Canada, and so the government appointed an external trustee that oversaw it. We laid everybody off except two people. I had 60 days to get it up and running for the fall schedule. So I needed $30,000 immediately just to cover those few weeks. And so the first thing I did was have a campaign called Operation Restore to raise 30,000, which we did. We raised more than that. We raised, yeah, much more than that. So we were able to open, but then it took us really 12 years to rebuild. And through that time, there were just a number of parts to the story. In fact, I'm in the process of writing a memoir, and that's part of it.
Thank you for saying 12 years. We all want change yesterday.
Oh, yeah, as we all know, it doesn't happen easily, but every day on the journey is a day of learning and trusting. And some days when we think we've done nothing, you look back in your life, and I'm finding in working on memoirs, I go back to places and people that I'd forgotten about, but I see how pivotal those people were or those moments were in my life. And so today may be one of those. The person I meet today may be one of those people. And the activity of the Spirit in superintending the activity of God in this creation, just think of the planet. Think of the planet. Here's I keep this on my desk when I pray. I spin that, and I look and I say, oh, there's Ephraim. He's over Ephraim. You're in Pakistan, in Lahore. Your mic's off.
I'm in Islamabad.
Islamabad, right? So there's Ephraim up there in Islamabad. I think we met in Lahore, didn't we?
Yeah, because I traveled to meet you there in Lahore.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm thinking about, around this world, you got those billions of people that the Spirit is superintending. And yet here we are, and God is at work within us here on this planet. And the activities that I have in raising funds is of His concern and His interest. And I trust Him. So today, as I walk, as I pray, as I do what I do, fulfill my responsibilities, the Spirit is superintending the creation, this globe, us here, my heart, your ministry. He is active. So bring the Spirit. I mean, the Spirit is with you. So just acknowledge the Spirit as part of all that you do and think and pray about it, and as you meet with people. And Lord Jesus, with that, as we spin the globe, this creation of yours that you have brought into existence, those that are made in your image, are on this beloved planet Earth, and we serve as part of your beloved. Go with us. Give us strength and wisdom and courage and faith. In the good name of Jesus. Amen.
Praise God.
Amen. Thank you
Blessings,
very much.
folks.
All right. Bye-bye.